I am a few minutes behind, but let me get things in order and we'll get started. Okay. Hope everyone is well. Making sure all the computer stuff is going through correctly. So just give me 2 minutes. Don't really need 2 minutes, but need a few minutes. Okay, a few seconds. Let's see. All right. All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. If it's your first time here, my name is Jamie Johnson. I am the owner of Seeds of Love LLC, a mental health coaching, counseling, and education space. And so, this morning I wanted to take some time. I hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving, but I wanted to take some time and kind of chat a little bit about seasonal depression, and hopefully that it is useful and helpful. I'm going to record this, so I know that it's a holiday weekend. And so if you are unable to see it right now, then I invite you to watch it later and take your time and share it with someone who may need the additional support this time of year. But again, my name is Jamie Johnson. I am a licensed clinical therapist, also a licensed minister. I am the owner of Seeds of Love LLC, and I am a therapist with about almost 20 years of um, experience in mental health. So this morning, I wanted to spend some time on seasonal depression because it is that kind of that time of year. And so a lot of people are having some challenges, and that is not unusual. But we want to be able to provide support for those who need it, right? And those who may not actually be able to um, actually get a therapist right now, but also would benefit from the support. So, um, just a little bit about seasonal depression. So it is not something different from depression. It is depression, right? It is depression that has a seasonal pattern. And so we'll talk a little bit about some things to explore to see if you are experiencing some of the symptoms of seasonal depression, but also we'll talk about some of the mind issues that influence the cognitive distortions that may influence our mood, and then a few things on kind of how we can support one another, right? How we can um, try to decrease some of the some of the symptoms, right? So let's see, seasonal depression, and because this space is a Christian-based space, right? So we think of things not only from the context of mental health, not only from the therapeutic context, but we're also thinking about things um, from a spiritual lens as well, from a Christian lens. I'm careful to say spiritual because many faiths use that particular term. So specifically a Christian lens, we believe in Jesus over here. So we're unraveling seasonal affective disorder, which is seasonal depression, with a bit of Jesus in therapy, right? And that's such a common term now, but we see it on shirts, and we're seeing such the push for Jesus in therapy. But it is truly something that um, is important, definitely in this hour and in this season, because many people um, of faith are experiencing and are now talking more so about their experiences with mental health, um, with suicidal thoughts, suicidal attempts. And so it is incredibly important that we're having the discussion this morning. Um, so, seasonal affective disorder, like I said, is depression, right? Um, it is not something that is different. It just talks about the pattern that is found seasonally, and most people attribute it to the winter seasons, which where it's seen the most, but it can also be in spring seasons. There are people that begin to feel depressed actually as the spring seasons change and moving into summer, and so it would still be considered a seasonal depression. It is more so just happening in warmer months. And so you want to look at, is there a pattern, right? Is there a pattern of depressive symptoms that comes in particular seasons and it's reoccurring? So let's look at, this is one of the workbooks, or kind of workbook that I created, that I use in group therapy for seasonal depression. And so I want to go through a few things. We won't go through the full book, but I do want to explore some of the things that I have, some of the questions. So really understanding your patterns, your seasonal patterns. One of the questions that you want to ask yourself is, how does your mood change during the fall and winter months? Or if you have more of a spring summer kind of shift, how does your mood change? Being able to ask that question. I didn't say, but you may want to take notes or kind of jot some things down, or questions that you want to explore later on. But we're looking at, how does your mood change during the fall and winter months? That's an important question to ask yourself. Are you sleeping more or less during this season? Many people find that they are sleeping more. And I'll put a kind of a note there. I do think we are seasonally wired, right? We're seasonally wired in the sense that when it gets colder, we are slowing down, right? We are having more, having the desire to be comfy and to be inside and to rest, right? And so I'm not saying that because you are, having deeper sleep or wanting to, cuddle up or stay in the bed longer, that you're definitely depressed, but you want to note if you need more, right? You still feel tired, you still feel exhausted, or even when you are resting or going to sleep, it doesn't feel like you have rested, right? You do feel restless, or you're having difficulty sleeping well. So it could be the extremes. That's the pattern that we're looking at. Are you sleeping way more than you used to? Are you getting sleep, but you feel so restless that when you wake up, you feel like you haven't been asleep? So you want to explore your sleep pattern. You want to explore what is shifting, and is it specific to the season? Another thing you want to look at is your energy level. Is it dipping? Do you find that it's abnormally low? Not that, okay, it's cold outside and I don't feel like going outside, I don't feel like doing a lot of things, but do I feel sad? Do I feel like do I have thoughts of like, I don't want to be here anymore? Do I think about the desire to like hide away and people never see me again, right? So it can be a situation where your energy level is dipping, but is it dipping to the point that it is causing you concern or causing others in your life concern? Because sometimes we don't notice the changes that our loved ones notice, right? And do we have the ear to hear when they want to share, and they're like, hey, I see something different with you. You don't seem yourself. And really being open to hearing that, because I think that is important. Sometimes we do not see it. Sometimes we do not have the eyes open to see and to hear what's going on with us. We're not assessing ourselves, which is extremely important. What are you less motivated to do during this time? I know for myself, I'm less motivated. I joke, but I'm not joking with a lot of people that I work with and have worked with. I say I'm going to get to the place in my career where I can afford not to work in winters, and I am that person because cold weather is not fun for me. Like, it's fun for me to observe. I like to look at snow. I don't want to have to leave the house on a regular basis and be in snow, right? I don't want to live where heavy, thick snow is something that is common. So I'm not motivated. I know that I'm not motivated to be in winter weather. But when we're talking about the level of motivation, Am I struggling with getting up to take a shower? Do I not want to brush my teeth? Am I having issues with appetite? Right? Am I eating more, eating less? I don't want to spend time around people. Again, you're assessing these things for extremes. Some things are seasonal because of what's happening around us, that we do have less time with people. But then there are seasons where we have more time. So you want to really take a good assessment of what's happening in your life, why it's happening, right? Sometimes it is related to just life, but there are many times where we're actually experiencing a level of depression, and we need to take hold of that before it takes hold of us, right? So what are you less motivated to do during this time? Do you spend time with family and friends during the fall and winter? And some do because of the holidays, right? The holidays are around, but sometimes this can be difficult. Sometimes this is difficult because of grief, right? Holidays are a time to celebrate, and they're often connected with family. But family, we lose family members, right? And so being around or being with family when there are certain key people, we'll say key people that have a big part of our heart are not present, that can be extremely difficult, right? And so we often want to isolate, or we don't want to be around the rest of the people in our family or loved ones, because that person is missing, right? And grief does play a big part in this time of year, because we are wired and we have had several experiences where or we've been taught, right, this is a time for family. And so oftentimes we can experience the grief because those family members are not here. So explore, is this difficult? Why is it difficult? Is it grief, or is it because being around people is harder, right? Because you don't have the motivation to have conversation. You're often thinking more negative. You feel disconnected, right? And so, one of the things that I would encourage is journaling about these things, right? Identifying the source or the underlying thought, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but identifying the underlying thoughts that influence the way that we are thinking, because that is going to contribute to our mood, our thoughts, feelings, behaviors. There's a cycle. Your thoughts influence your thinking. Your thoughts influence your feelings influence your behavior. And so that's the cognitive behavioral cycle. And when you're trying to shift that cycle, you have to take a look at all of those parts. What am I thinking? How does it make me feel? And what does it make me do? Right? And so when we're noticing these changes in winter months, well, what have I been thinking about? How have I been thinking? Like I said, we'll go into that in a few minutes. And then what is it making me feel? And be very specific about those things, right? It's difficult to be specific, but it's important to be specific. So sometimes you might need to pull up a list of feelings. Sometimes we don't have the language or the name, right? And so if you look up a list of feelings and then you identify, right, you get the definition of them and then see, okay, oh, this is what I've been feeling. So you're looking at the thoughts, the feelings, and the behavior. What is making connection difficult during this time for you? That is something to explore. And then what other patterns do you notice during fall and winter months? Ask yourself these questions, because there's a pattern, right? If we're talking about seasonal depression, there is a pattern that you need to identify in order to begin to shift that and help to make things a bit better. Let's see. Okay, I want to go to a different screen. Let me get out of this one first. And we will look at those behavioral patterns. Like I said, this is one of the workbooks that I created for working through seasonal depression. But we won't. Is there a way that I hope y'all could see that. Can I zoom? Hopefully. It's zooming for me. I don't know if it's zooming for you. If it doesn't look clear, just let me know in the chat. But I'm going to go through a bit of it. So I talked about thought, feeling, behavior cycle, right? So we're looking at the cycle of our thinking and how it's influencing our behavior. There is what we call negative thought patterns or cognitive distortions, right? Cognitive distortions. There are 4 kind of primary yeah, I'll say four primary cognitive distortions. And they fall under self centered, blaming others, um, minimizing and mislabeling, those are together, and assuming the worst. And so we'll go through a few of those and look at whether or not you engage or unknowingly utilize some of these cognitive distortions, because it is undoubtedly influencing how you are feeling and then how you are behaving, right? So self centered cognitive distortions involve thinking in extremes. One of them is all or nothing. You may hear that one a lot. All or nothing, also known as black or white thinking, and it's the inability to see shades of gray. Everything is viewed in terms of extremes. For example, something is either awful or it's fantastic. You believe you're either a total failure or you're completely perfect. Um, One of the examples I wrote in there, I cheated on my diet, so I might as well eat whatever I want to eat. So there's these extremes, right? All or nothing thinking does not give you the space to see, could it mean something else, right? So if you engage in all or nothing thinking, and let's say we're talking about an individual, you're struggling with this person, but you utilize all or nothing thinking, and someone has said something out of the way to you. If you are a person who has black and white thinking, you're going to think from an extreme. So it couldn't be that maybe they're having a bad day. You're going to think, oh, they hate me, right? So it's so extreme that you can't connect to the alternative. There could be an alternative thought. And so all or nothing thinking keeps the possibilities very limited. And if you limit your thinking, you limit your possibilities, right? And you lean towards the negative, which many of us do. And if we struggle with depression, we're definitely going to lean towards the negative. Then there's no way to see that something else could be happening here, right? You can't see a bigger picture. The tunnel of how you view things is very narrow. And so it does not give space for um, a possible solution that is not black or white, right? It doesn't give space, and you need space in order to be able to think things through. And so that's falling under the more self-centered cognitive distortion. Another one is mind reading or jumping to conclusions. So this happens when people assume that they know what someone else is thinking. For example, someone might see a stranger's unpleasant expression and automatically assume that they're thinking something negative about them, right? So you're mind reading, you're jumping to conclusions. Listen to these as I'm going through them and think of experiences that you had, right? And are you engaging in some of this negative thinking, some of these cognitive distortions? Should statements. I hear should statements, I feel like 1,000 times a day. And should statements not only contribute to depression, but also contribute to anxiety. And so some of you may be thinking, or just in the vein of depression, but they contribute. Anxiety and depression often run alongside of each other, right? There you can struggle with both. And so should statements are the ones that that we make to ourselves, that we should or we ought to or we must. And so a lot of times they're rooted in unrealistic expectations that most likely won't be met. Right. I should have known better is something we kind of were raised on, right? You know better than that. You should have known better. But there's also this kind of extreme that when we miss the mark, when we don't get it right, that we just assume, we start saying, oh, I should have, I ought to. And it's unrealistic, right? It's unrealistic to always get it right. It's unrealistic to know everything. It's unrealistic that you'll never disappoint someone. It's unrealistic that things will always be perfect. And so it begins to produce this kind of guilt and shame and resentment, right? You start telling yourself that in a way that you're bad, that you don't get it, like you've messed up, that you're not a good person, right? It starts, the more you use should statements, the more it starts to eat away at your self-esteem and your self-confidence. You start saying things like, I shouldn't have made a mistake, or I should have known, I should be nice regardless of how I feel, or I should I should go even when I don't feel well, right? We don't give ourselves the space to be human. And that, like I said, leads to a lot of resentment, a lot of guilt, a lot of shame. The next one, let's see. There is a lot of these. I'm not going to go through all of them. Um, oop, there we go. I have these like numbers here, so it's making it hard for me to see what I want to see. Blaming others is the opposite of self-centered thinking. When things go wrong, it's always someone else's fault, right? And so that's something that we definitely have to explore. Why is it always someone else? Why are we always blaming someone else? So it allows us to distance ourselves, one, from responsibility and conflict, and it helps us feel like we're more in control than we actually are, right? That if something went wrong, it wasn't because of me, right? It takes the pressure off, when in reality, we are all at some point part. I'll say part. We have to take ownership of our part, because we all play a role in something that has occurred. We're never without complete we're rarely without complete fault. And so being able to take responsibility is part of that healing process. The mislabeling. So these distortions involve giving less weight to positive things and more weight to the negative things. So magnification and minimization. This distortion, also known as the binocular trick, because it skews perspective through either exaggerating or minimizing meaning, importance, or likelihood. So the example in here is an athlete who is generally a good player but makes a mistake may magnify the impact and start to believe that they're a terrible player, right? So they magnify that one mistake. Once a failure, always a failure, right? It's that mindset that keeps you bound to not feeling like you could ever be successful. And so, we always often hear in scripture talking about our mind and renewing our mind. The importance of renewing our mind daily is that most of us are engaging in some of these cognitive distortions at some point. And we've got to get to that place of restoration and renewal. And we've got to do it every day because of the things we encounter on a regular basis, right? And so if you feel like you've gone through something or you failed at something and you continue to recycle that daily, you're not renewing your mind. You're not giving yourself grace. You're keeping yourself in a space where you always feel bad about who you are, what you're doing. And if you're always feeling bad about that, right? We say the thought, feeling, behavior cycle. If you're always thinking negative, right? You're always thinking that you're a failure, and you're feeling bad about what you do and who you are. You feel incompetent. You feel, unsuccessful. You feel like you're not going to accomplish anything. Then your behavior is going to line up with that. As much as you want it to be the opposite, you're going to begin acting out the thoughts and the feelings. So if failure is something that you continue to recycle, you're going to keep noticing things falling apart, right? Because you start leading with that mindset, and where your mind goes, your body follows, right? So the importance of starting with the thoughts in order to address the feelings and the subsequent behavior is extreme. So the importance of it is something that we've got to lock into, right? We've got to lock into how to shift our mind in order to now become healthier in how we engage with others and even with ourselves, right? Another one, labeling and mislabeling. Labeling and mislabeling, extreme forms of overgeneralization. So there's judgments of value are assigned to ourselves and to others based on only one example or experience. So the example in here is a student may label themselves an idiot for failing an assignment. A waiter may label a customer as stingy old stingy old mister if they leave a bad tip, right? Mislabeling refers to the application of highly emotional, loaded, and inaccurate language when making a statement. And so someone gets in a car accident, they label themselves as a terrible driver, right? So those extremes, those are the things we have to capture, right? We have to take hold of the fact that those those thoughts are not true all the time, right? And we know that scripture, right? Philippians 4, 8 and 9. Philippians 4 verses 8 and 9. Think on whatever is pure, lovely, and admirable, right? And we have to put those things in practice. We have to put those things in practice in order to get to a place of thinking healthy and well, in order to healing, and experiencing less depressive symptoms. I'm not saying that these things are easy by any stretch of the imagination. It requires genuine practice on a regular basis, right? And so we're looking at today seasonal depression and some of the ways that our thinking contributes to um, maintaining that cycle of depression, maintaining that pattern of depression. Because seasonal depression, like I said in the beginning, is not a unusual form of depression. It's not a unique or different form of depression. It just has a seasonal pattern, and that's something that we have to understand so that we can kind of lean into that and begin to treat it, so to speak. Right? Okay. Let's keep going. This one is smaller. Like I said, this is the workbook that I use for group, and so probably don't need to have you look at that page because it is so small. So I'll go through them. Well, you may be able to see it. You might be able to see it. Let's see. Just let me know. It is it's definitely a small. Maybe I could zoom. Can I zoom? Can I zoom? Can I maximize? What can I do? Let me know if that helps y'all. That might be better. Okay. Assuming the worst can lead to depression and includes the following 5 distortions. I won't read them all, but I do want you to jot them down if they are helpful. Overgeneralizing. So when broad conclusions are made from a single event, this is considered an overgeneralization. For example, somebody gets a flat tire, they say, this always happens to me. I have terrible luck, right? Something has always happened to me. Nothing ever works out right. That's an overgeneralization because we are not hyper-focused on the negative. We are hyper-focused on what is not working. And so when that one thing happens, now we're overgeneralizing and nothing good ever happens. Right? We easily swayed into nothing ever good happens to me. That is overgeneralization. Emotional reasoning occurs when we accept our emotions as fact. It is often described as I feel it, therefore it must be true. This is a common distortion because emotions are powerful, but they are not necessarily true. So, for example, someone may say, I feel lucky tonight. I'll bet my paycheck on the horse race, right? There's nothing that's going to say that you're going to win because you feel lucky, right? That's not truth. Sometimes in therapy or conversations, I'll hear people say, well, I know that they hate me. Well, what's the evidence that they hate you? Well, they didn't call me. That is not a fact that someone hates you because you didn't receive a call, right? So there's this emotional reasoning because the emotion feels so intense and so powerful, but it does not make it true. Mental filtering, when individuals focus only on the negative aspects and ignore the positive in situations or events. This is an example of this is focusing only on the negative feedback, like from a performance or presentation or a work review. You're only focused on the negative feedback. Someone could say, oh, you did really well in such and such. I know you could do better in this area. One thing is what you hyperfixate on. And so that is mental filtering. You have filtered out all the positive and you have left only the negative to chew on. And you're going to chew on that until the point that it makes you feel incompetent, till it makes you feel sad, till it makes you feel like, okay, I don't want to work there anymore. And then you start, your behavior changes at work and you're no longer effective in the job that you had before. It's a cycle, right? It's your thoughts move your feelings then move you to behave in a particular way. And we have the ability to shift that, but we have to get clear on what we're doing, right? Disqualifying the positive. Similar to mental filtering, disqualifying the positive occurs when positive experiences are rejected. When individuals do this about their own accomplishments, it can erode away self-esteem and confidence. For example, I only won because there was no competition, right? We see that with those who have low self-esteem, as it said, right? That struggle with feeling rejected or have been rejected, that carry that kind of weight of rejection and often anticipate being rejected. We see that very, very often. And then personalization, as the title implies, the distortion involves taking everything personally and assigning blame to oneself, right? So an example, it's my fault. You know, if the party failed, you planned this party, you invited the people, you decorated, you did all the things, but no one really showed up. So it's my fault. Well, could there be an alternative? Could something else have happened? Could there have been a miscommunication? Could it have been a bad day that a lot of people had other things planned? That personalization does not allow for space for it to be something else, another cause, another reason. And there typically is another cause or another reason. So we don't give ourselves the opportunity to experience something, to see that there could be another alternative, right? There could be another reason. There could be. So taking time to really assess and see what some of your cognitive distortions are. I'm going to tell you that we all at some point have utilized some of them. Seasonal depression is very difficult for many people, and even this process of exploring what is behind, right, how you're thinking is also going to be difficult, especially if you're in the thick of it. And so one of the things I encourage is before, if you know that you have a seasonal, if you know that you have seasonal depression or you've had it, and you're moving into that space, I encourage having a plan, right? Having a winter plan, so to speak, because it is something that is happening. You know that you deal with it on a regular basis, and part of that that plan requires you to do this assessment, right? It requires you to look at your pattern, and then it requires you to look at how you're thinking. And if you're able to look at all of those things, then it's a little easier to come up with a plan for how to navigate it. One of the things I encourage is community, which is very difficult for many people, right? Community is often it can be less in winter months because a lot of people are going in, or a lot of people are staying in. But find your people, right? Find those who are willing to support you, right? Support you in difficult times. Find those who are willing to have conversation with you in difficult times, right? Find those who are supportive. But one of the things I encourage is finding meaning in this particular season. One of the things that I explore is the fact that winter is a time to reset for me. And so it becomes quieter. I'm less busy. I am purposely trying to be less busy because the purpose for me of winter is preparing for another season. It is getting things in order so that I can have a better new year. I do believe the year has already started, right? But it allows me to get things in order for whether I'm starting a new project, whether it's a new fiscal year. But for me, the season is starting over. And so finding meaning in the winter, finding gratitude, what am I grateful for? I do sit with a lot of what has made me smile during the season? Like, who has made me smile? Who has been there for me? What do I have? How have I grown this year? Right? I look at what I'm grateful for and who I'm grateful for, because gratitude does help with our mood. Um, Develop a routine that helps you ground yourself on a regular basis. We struggle with developing that routine because we get in, we experience less motivation. But what I would encourage is the rule of one, right? There's one thing that you're going to make sure that you do every day, whether it is a nature walk, whether it is calling, someone who is supportive, whether it is spending time in your journal, it's reading, it's eating something that nourishes you. The rule of one, picking at least one. Don't allow yourself to not do the one good thing that you're going to focus on. But this takes some time to think about and to plan. And so don't allow yourself to go into the season because we've come through Thanksgiving, but we still have Christmas. And the challenge is that both of those seasons can be very difficult. Everyone having cognitive distortions. You're right. Everyone is having a lot of cognitive distortion. Many people are having a lot of cognitive distortions. And the goal is that we are addressing those cognitive distortions and not just allowing them to dictate our day, right? And that can be part of the plan too, like identifying those cognitive distortions and finding the alternative thought. We're to think on the good things. We're to not be anxious, right? Learning where our strength is, and not our physical strength, but our emotional, mental, spiritual strength. Where does that lie, right? With whom? For those of us that are believers, oftentimes we feel very weak. And we do lean heavily on God because of how weak we feel, right? Because He is our strength in our weakness. And so He provides that shelter and that foundation and that support so that we feel that we're not alone. And so I'm going to leave you with the idea of developing your own wellness plan. And if you think about, any other plan, you have different parts of it, different attributes. This wellness plan that I want you to create for yourself for these difficult times includes people I can call, or I can talk to for help. It may not be a long list. Don't get bogged down by the fact that you may not have a lot of supportive people. That has nothing to do with anything. If you have one, if you have two, if it's a support line, if it is, suicide hotline 988, if it is, if I'm not an advocate for AI mental health chat, I'm just not. But finding that one person, if it is somebody who has, been a listening ear before, if it's that one person from church, or that one person from the gym, or that person, whoever that is, who are the people that I can call and talk to for help? The next thing I would say is, how can I look after myself? How can I take care of myself? If it's going for that walk, if it is making sure that you are eating living things during that time. People laugh at me, but I'm like, where's the vegetables? Sometimes we need to make sure we're eating living things, fruits and vegetables, things that are real, not things that are in the bag. And then daily habits to maintain. What daily habits am I going to make sure I maintain? Am I going to make sure I brush my teeth and wash, and take a shower today? Am I going to make sure that, I get outside? Am I going to make sure I make the bed, that I don't stay in the bed, right? I may move from bed to living room and take a shower. I might be on the couch because I'm feeling depressed, but I'm committing to moving. Making sure that you have a social connection plan. You shouldn't go 3 or 4 months and you haven't seen anybody, right? You haven't seen when we were in pandemic, we were doing Zooms. If it's got to be a Zoom, do a Zoom. My preference is, when can I get out of the house and see someone? A social connection plan is important. And then what are the signs that I need to watch for this season? Like, what do I need to watch for? And I know that I'm going to a place that is, that I'm feeling heavier, or I'm feeling more depressed, or I'm, thoughts of suicide are happening, right? What is it that I need to watch for during this particular season? It's important to think about these things before it gets as heavy. But sometimes we don't have that time, right? Sometimes we're just in it. So think of the rule of one. What is the one thing that I could do today? Also think of what will help me to feel well today. The importance of sunlight with depression has been researched and is um, it is not a lie, right? So we need sun, and we have less hours of sun, which is one of the reasons that seasonal depression does occur, is typically because we have less sunlight. So when that sun is up, get sun on your face, right? Get outside, even if you're in your front yard or your backyard. It might be cold, but is the sun shining, right? Get in that direct sunlight, because vitamin D is extremely important with helping alleviate depressive symptoms, right? So think of something as we're going further into the winter months of how can I remain well as the season is changing, right? Am I dealing with grief? Am I dealing with the cognitive distortions? Let me think about all of the things that are contributing to how my mood is changing. Thoughts, feelings, behavior cycle. I would encourage, as I'm closing, I would encourage you to journal about what you've been thinking about, and then really see, okay, I've been thinking these thoughts for how long? And then on the next page, because of these thoughts, how has this made me feel? And write all the feelings down of how it's made you feel because of the thoughts that you're recycling and you're dealing with on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And then how do you think, how is this influencing my behavior right now? How is this changing me? How is this, is it making me withdraw? Is it making me isolate? Is it making me more irritable? Is it making me tearful? Am I crying a lot? Right? How is it influencing my behavior? So I'm gonna do a few more on the topic of seasonal depression during December, but I wanted to introduce the topic today. And, like I said, if this is useful for anyone, you can share it with them. But it is important that that this is not something that you have to do alone, right? You don't have to do it alone. Connect with community. Again, I'm the owner of Seeds of Love LLC, mental health coaching, counseling, and creative and education space. I will have a seasonal depression group. Hopefully I can start another one in January, but we'll see. It just depends on what the feedback is. If not, I will continue to share on this platform so that you have support. You can reach out to me on the Seeds of Love LLC-VA Facebook page. You can also email me at seedsoflove@gmail.com if you have any questions or would like additional support. But I hope, again, that you had a happy Thanksgiving. If it was difficult, please know that you're in my thoughts and prayers. And I encourage you to reach out and get support, if not from me, from someone, and that you don't do this alone. So again, y'all have a great Saturday. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you in December.